Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for those questions and for those answers from our debaters. Sheriff Gonzalez, please stay with me on stage. Amaya and Mohammed are going to leave the stage now. They're going to work on preparing their final summary speeches. We will hear from them again in just a few minutes. But while they are preparing those speeches, I'm going to ask the rest of our panelists to join me on stage. And I am going to turn the tables a little bit. I have some questions for our panelists. Sheriff, since you are on stage with me right now, I will start with you, but I'm just curious if the cases that Mohammed and Amaya made here today, how would they do in your line of work? How do you, I mean, obviously it's not exactly the most ideal environment for making the restructuring the funding of policing argument, but I'm curious how you think their arguments would be dealt with.
I think they're good starting points. I think that one thing that I hear maybe on both presentations are kind of broad strokes with it, and sometimes it seems like all police departments are corrupt, and on the flip side that all we have to do is say let's just intermix social workers and all of a sudden we're going to have a different culture all of a sudden. So I think that there needs to be a little bit more compromise. I think that once I challenged Mohammed, for example, on the cutting of the funding, I think he backed up a little bit and said, oh, well, wait a minute, there'd have to be a stimulus package or something to kind of see how we could transition from one system over to another, instead of the funding kind of puts everything all of a sudden saying, let's just cut funding, period. And so I think that having a thought of what would a transition period look like where we possibly could wean some of the things that law enforcement responds to into other areas might be the better approach rather than just defunding. On the other one, I think that wishful thinking that we could change the culture of 18,000 police agencies at once. You're talking about having appointed and elected officials that run these agencies. So there's a lot of turnover. And so there's a lot of different leadership that steps in and out. Most police leaders aren't going to stay on the job for a very long time. And so you're going to have changes to that. And then I do like the fact that she talked about hybrid approaches, because we have some and are proven. And why should we do away with those that really are working and already hybrid working with social workers? But at the same time, we've got to deal with the elephant in the room, which is the dark history, like I said, of policing in America when it comes to Black communities, and especially Black communities. And that's something that we typically don't tackle first. And so, but I think they would do well. It would be a good starting point. I don't know that each argument in face value right now would be convincing enough, but I think that it's a good starter for the conversation.
I really appreciate that. And, that's what we're here to do, is to start some conversations that our students are having. Dean Bledsoe, the same question to you. How do you think these arguments would be accepted? What types of conversations would they inspire in the professional circles that you're in?
I think they were very, very smartly presented. I think that if we take a look at what Mohammed did, he sought to address the issue by grabbing a hold of something that most people seem to agree with. The whole issue with the proper training in the mental health arena, and that officers being ill-suited for that. The example he used in New York, just one of the many examples that are out there. Thing that is widely debated. And a second smart thing in reference to engaging that way, he did engage the debate the way that it has been cast in a lot of circles, and that is that you would say defunding the police altogether, as they did in, I guess, Newark, or I think there were a couple of places where they really did defund the police more than just take away a unit or two. So I think he was smart in trying not to go there and to pick out something that was widely accepted. And I think what was smart about Amaya's argument is she kind of in many ways made the same argument that Mohammed made, because what she did was she simply took the same type of fact situation and suggested that meant that you needed to have more police, and she used it to talk about the individual citizens being victims, and if more police had been available at present, it might be a different situation. So I think they were both going after psychology and looking at the public discussion and weighing their arguments to how to take advantage of the public discussion and where most people were. So I thought that it was smart in how both of them decided to present their arguments, because neither one wanted to confront the argument head on, so to speak, and they chose what I think was probably an efficient path for each one of them to advance their arguments.
I agree with that. I was really impressed. One of the things that we did is we spent a few weeks looking at what cases they wanted to make and how they wanted to argue them. And I thought that they really honed in on a nuance there that I was impressed by as a teacher. And that leads me into my next question for both of you, which is, what skills do you see debate developing for both Mohammed and Amaya? And how do you think that skill set would be helpful in either one of your industries? And I'll flip it this time, Dean Bledsoe. I'll start with you.
Okay. Well, obviously, it's great training to be a lawyer, because I'm a practicing lawyer besides being a professor or an administrator over at Texas Southern. So I still actually am engaged in the practice of law regularly, and I would say that what they're doing will very much help them in that regard. But, there's a great book by Jerry Spence called How to Win Your Case Every Time. And in Spence's book, he talks about how the skills in that book will help you if you're a city council person, you're a citizen trying to go for your public body to try to make for a change in public policy, being able to intelligently discuss issues and being pressed to maybe even discuss issues that are different from your own point of view are really good. Because I think one of the things that, I think you made this point early, Sarah, and I think this is one thing they should always keep, and it should be instructive, and that is you should always understand the other person's argument. One of the things that the great Thurgood Marshall always did, and people didn't understand, that he could go find the most racist judge and go sit down in their office if they would allow him and pick their brain. He wanted to find out the culture of that community, and he wanted to find out how people felt about different issues. And so he would not push the culture where it wouldn't go, but he would always go and try to find out information about the other side, what it was, what the thing, community that might be countervailing what he was trying to accomplish. That way he could figure out what he could do. Sometimes do, for example, a life sentence may be the best thing he can do. He may not be able to get someone acquitted, but just to save someone from the electric chair. And I know one of the cases that he lost that I think the history has shown the man was innocent was the Lyons case out of Oklahoma. And that's one of those examples. But, he sent a message back to the national office saying that there's no way for me to do anything in this community, that the authorities are so bent on doing what they want to Mr. Lyons, they never wanted to look at the truth. But he did save his life, but he stayed in prison the rest of his life. He did not commit a crime.
Such a remarkable point about knowing what is possible and tailoring your argument appropriately. Sheriff Gonzalez, I'll ask the same question to you. What are the skills that you saw demonstrated from our debaters? How do you think those would play out in your line of work or in the professions that you've been in?
Yeah, no, very well. I think in this country in general, we're lacking sophisticated debate and discussion, regardless of the viewpoint. I mean, we've seen it at the highest levels in our country, unfortunately, where we're so divided. And these are complex issues. Even defund the police, for example, has so many different meanings to so many different folks. And I think they both made very good arguments. I like how Maya structured hers as well, saying, I'm going to talk about three different things. And and that structure was really good. The pace, as was mentioned, I think in the chat, was very well. I think at one time, Amaya got a little bit excited and said like buttload, and so I think just kind of we got to maintain our composure and hone in our passion a little bit, just depending on who our audience is. It doesn't bother me, but again, I mean, I'm thinking more broadly here is that making sure that we remain consistent with making our arguments and kind of maintaining that level of dialogue, maintaining it a certain decorum, if you will. But I think both are great, and you know, I look forward to the work that you're doing, and I commend you all, you know, for supporting this and encouraging this. We definitely need more, and all the benefits that come with great debate and dialogue. It's such an art, and something that unfortunately we don't embrace enough of and encourage.
Thank you both so much for your time. You can both leave the stage. We appreciate your expertise and we appreciate your questions for our debaters. I am going to